Hello YouTube and welcome to part 6. In today's video we're going to work on an ADB class. If you're not sure what ADB is or what you can use it for, I do have a video tutorial on ADB specifically. The link should be somewhere on the screen right about now, so make sure to watch that. Then this video is going to be a little bit easier to grasp. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and start working on our ADB class, and the first thing that we are going to create is a constructor. So let's create a public constructor for ADB that's going to take a string argument, and that's going to be our device ID. So every time we initialize new instance of ADB, we want to make sure we pass in a device ID. So to hold our device ID, we're going to create a private variable that's going to hold a string. We're going to call it ID, and then we're going to say ID equals to device ID. So this part right here is going to be useful for all of our public classes, but we're also going to have some public static classes like this command, accessible from anywhere without having to instantiate new ADB instance. So let's go ahead and create some more public static classes so you guys can sort of understand what kind of ADB commands you can represent with public static methods. Okay, let's say public static. This one is not going to return anything, so it's going to be void. And we're going to say kill server. And we're just going to execute our command here. I'm going to create the same thing for start server. And then we're going to create another command, also static, but this one is going to return an array list. We're going to call it get connected devices. So let me just explain to you what this command is going to do for us. If we go to our terminal here and we type ADB devices, we get this as an output. So what I need my method to do is to parse this output just to return list of device IDs that are currently connected to the computer. So that's what we're going to do right now. We then create a variable that's going to hold our devices or device IDs, and we're gonna say new array list. Then we're gonna have another variable which is going to be output, and that's going to hold the output over a command, and the command is very simple, ADB devices. And then I'm gonna say for string line in output. We're going to split this output by new line, and then we're gonna say if. Actually, before we get to if, we're gonna clean the line itself. We're gonna say line.trim, and then we're gonna say if line ends with devices or device. We're going to add this line to our devices, but before we do that, we're going to clean it up a little bit. So we're going to replace device string with nothing, and then we're going to make sure that we clean the remaining string to make sure we don't have any blank spaces. And then at the end, we're going to return the devices that are connected. So let me just explain a little bit more what this does. So first thing, we get an output like this, and then we split it by line, so we have a line like this, and we check if that line, we trim it, so we trim any blank spaces, which there are none, and then we check if it ends with device. This line does not, so we move to the next line. We trim any blank spaces, okay, so it trims this, then we check whether this line ends with device, and it does, so then we replace device with nothing, so we have a string like this, and then we trim it, which leaves us with the device ID that we want, and then we add that device ID to our list. So let's go ahead and create some public methods now. Now all the public methods will require us to pass the device ID. So this method is going to return to us the activity that's in the foreground. So we're gonna say public string get get foreground activity. And we're going to return the output of our command. So we're gonna run command ADB -s plus our ID. I'm gonna say shell dump sys. We're gonna dump windows, and then we're going to grep. The reason I'm on the Windows, but I'm saying grep because this command is going to be executed on the device itself and not on my machine. And that's because we say ADB -s shell, right? So it's going to run inside the shell of that device. So that's why I say grep. If you would say without the shell and you're on the Windows, you would have something like find str. But I do recommend to leave it in shell to run on the device's shell itself. That's better. So we're gonna say m current focus, and that's all we're gonna return. So this is going to return the activity that's in the foreground. And in the tutorial, in the ADB tutorial that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I do explain and I show what this command does. So if you're not sure, make sure to check it out. Let's move on. I'm going to create another method that's going to return a string to us. That one is going to tell us which Android version we have on our device. So I'm going to call it get Android version as string, and I'm going to create a variable to hold our output. I'm going to say ADB -s, and again remember the ID. We're also going to run this in device's shell, and we're interested in a tool called getProp, and we're interested in the key RO build version .is, and then we're going to say if output length is equal to 3, then we're going to add one more thing to our output. It's going to be .0, and I'll explain why we're doing this. Then we're going to return output. So basically, when we run this command here, we can get a version as string that's going to contain something like 6.0, or it might contain 6.0.1. Okay, the only time we have a length of 3 is when it's the very new version, like Lollipop, like 5.0 or 6.0, right? But I want to be consistent. I want to make sure I have 3 digits in my version. So that's why I go ahead and add a 0 here, just to be consistent. Okay, so now next method is going to return Android version as an integer. So we're going to say public int get Android version. And that's the one we're probably going to end up using the most. So we're going to say return integer, parse integer, get Android version as string, and then we're going to replace all of the periods with nothing. And then we're going to return our integer value. Then another method that's pretty useful is going to tell us which packages are installed on our device. So we're going to create a public public method that's going to return array list, and we're going to call it get installed packages. So we're going to create an array list to hold our packages, and then we're going to create a string array that's going to hold our output of the command ADB -s plus our ID, and then we're going to say our command, which is we're going to be using shell, and then package manager, and we're going to tell package manager to list all the packages, and then what we're going to do, we're going to split the output by new line, and then we're going to go through our output by package. So you can say for package ID in output, packages add package ID, and we're going to replace package semicolon string with nothing, and then we're going to make sure to trim the rest of that, and at the end we're going to return all of the packages. So this method is sort of similar to get connected devices. It's also going to return an array list of all of the packages that are currently installed on our device. Let's create some methods to interact with our applications to do certain things like open application, or force stop an application, or clear data. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say public avoid. This method's not going to return anything. So first one is going to be open apps activity. And we're just going to execute a command. So we're going to say, we're going to use shell and activity manager, and we're going to tell our activity manager to start the activity that we're going to pass into it. So we're going to say API, we're going to be using API for Android, intent, category, launcher, and then we're going to be using another API from Android as well, also intent, and this one is going to be action main, and then we're going to pass in our package. We're going to need package ID, and then we're also going to need activity ID. Now we don't have those things yet, so we're going to go in here and we're going to make sure that this method takes in those parameters for package ID and activity ID. So now that we have this, we can open specific applications. Now let's go ahead and create those methods for clear data. Let's say clear apps data. And for this method, we just need the package ID. And we're going to use, let's say, we're going to use a package manager. And package manager, we're going to tell package manager to clear data for this package ID. And here, in our for stop method, just say for stop app, we also need our package ID, and we're going to be using activity manager for this one. But we also need to use package ID here. So we're going to tell our activity manager to force stop this package. Now, next method we're going to create is going to install. So I'm going to say public void install app, and this one is going to take an argument as well. This is going to be path, say apk path, and we're going to run our command for ADB -s id, and then we're going to say install, and then our apk path at the end. Then we're going to have another command that's going to uninstall app. For this one, we also need package ID, and we're just going to say uninstall. Then let's go ahead and create another method that's going to clear our log buffer. Let's call it clear log buffer, and that's going ADB -s shell -c, and we can remove the package ID from here. Okay. A couple more methods to push, pull, maybe delete files and move files around and take screenshots from the device. So let's say public public void, and we're going to push file to device with this method. So two things we need. We need the source of the file on our server, and then we need to know the target location on our device. So those are going to be our parameters that you can pass in, and then we're going to run our command. So we're going to say push from source to target. Then another method is going to do the pulling, pull file, also source and target. But this one works in reverse way. So we're going to say pull from source, which is the location of the file on the device, and then target, which is the location that we want to use to store this file. Then let's go ahead and create a method to delete file on our device. The only thing we need for this one is the target, and we're gonna say shell rm and then our target. Let's create another method to move file. This is going to be different from push or pull, as this is going to be moving file on the device from one location to another. So we're going to say shell move, and then again the source is going to be the original location on the device for the file that you want to move, and then the target is going to be the location where you want to move that file to, also on the device. Now let's take a screenshot. For this method, we're going to leave the target argument so we know where to save our screenshot. And we're going to say shell screen cap, and then that's going to go to this target location, and then later on you can actually uh, couple this method with like pull file if you want to store that screenshot on your server. You can first take screenshot and then save it to that location, then you can use pull file using source. The target from here will be your source here, and then the target on your computer will go here. Hopefully that makes sense. Then one more method. Let's do reboot device. This one is not going to take anything, no arguments. We're just going to say reboot. And then a couple more methods that we can use to get some sort of information about the device's state. Let's create one that's going to tell us the device model, for example. Let's call it get device model, and that's going to return a string, no arguments necessary. We're going to run this in devices shell, and we're interested in the utility get prop ro product model. Make sure to return that. Now we can also return device's serial number. For example, we're going to use same get prop tool, but this time we're going to ask for serial number, and we're going to return that. Let's see what else we can do. We can return device's carrier if it has one. So you can say get device carrier, and we're also going to use the same get prop tool, but this time we're interested in the key GSM operator alpha. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right here. I think that's enough for now. We might expand this class later on as we start creating some API. If there is a need for some other methods, I'll show you how to implement those, but right now we're going to stop here. This is not entirely done though, as I said. I'm not sure if I said it in the beginning, but there's a couple of methods specifically for logcat that I have not shown you how to implement here. That's because those methods are kind of bigger ones, and I would like to separate that into a different video so it's not too difficult to kind of understand what's happening here. Because diff methods are pretty simple, they're pretty self-explanatory, they're very small, most of them with exception from maybe like get installed packages and get connected devices. Everything else is pretty straightforward, but the logcat methods are not as straightforward, and I will need to do some explaining there, so that's why I want to just split it into a separate video. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, take care.